For anyone, if I hold it in English because my podcast masakra. Okay, everyone, good. So I'll be talking about .NET Standard 2.0. Has anyone heard about it? Raise your hand. Has anyone ever published a library that targets .NET Standard, any version? Does anyone even know how to create a project? Because it's kind of hard. I mean, it's weird, because if you create a portable class library, it doesn't target .NET Standard. So like, to get it, it's weird. We'll go through it, but it's getting better. That's upfront. So I first named the presentation .NET Standard 2.0 by John Teeter, because it's kind of futuristic, but my name is actually Goran Karacic. So for starters, the agenda. I'll introduce myself quickly. We'll go through .NET as it is today. I'll show what's new in .NET Standard 2.0. I'll actually explain how it works, because there's a great... the documentation is really, really good, so I could get a lot of insight. I will attempt to do a demo that I know for sure doesn't work, unfortunately, because today I updated Visual Studio 2017 and everything broke. I will show you how you can figure out if your shared projects are and PCLs are compatible, and how can you determine which .NET standard you can target. I'll show you a demo of the tooling, and that actually works still. So that'll be good. We will have like a bit insights into the future and some final thoughts about it. And eventually, like when we finish everything, there's like the parts where questions come in, and it should be questions and answers, but I cannot promise that I will have answers. So yeah, my name is, like I said, Goran. I'm 26 years from Croatia, and I used to be a Microsoft student partner. I was even active in Warsaw while I was on my Erasmus studies. That was fun. I got introduced even to some people from Poznań, and eventually I ended up moving my company from Zagreb to Poznań, and I really love it here. Yeah, I'm currently a VPF developer at Vicoins, and I love ice cream. So even if it's cold outside, if you know a good ice cream place, just tell it to me. And I mean, I'm here for like 6 more hours, then I go back to Croatia for holidays. But yeah, tell me, and when I'll be back, I'll check out your ice cream place. So now that we got that all lame stuff sorted out, let's talk a bit about .NET. So when I say .NET, what do you think of? It's Windows, of course. Now it's kind of a bit broader, but everyone thinks of Windows. You think of the .NET framework. Some of you might think of .NET Core. Did anyone actually deploy something with .NET Core into production? That's great. Nice. Do you like Project JSON, or do you like the CS Proj more?
JSON.
Okay. And another .NET platform would be Xamarin. Does anyone do anything with Xamarin? Production? No. Okay, so this is a rough overview. So depends on which framework you are targeting. You have base libraries. So you have base class libraries, you have core libraries for .NET Core, and you have monoclass libraries for Xamarin. And the problem with that is there is a ton of disadvantages. So some of them are here. It's difficult to reuse skills. You need to master 3 base library classes. So depending on which framework you are targeting, for example, reflection works completely. I mean, if you have stuff in production, you know, reflection is totally different on .NET Core than .NET Framework, and different from Mono as well. So you have to know for 3 platforms how it works if you want to target 3 platforms. Yeah. The other problem with portable class libraries is that if you decide to share your code among different platforms, once you choose all the platforms that you have, you only get like a tiny small subset of the APIs that you can reuse, and a lot of code will still be platform specific. And yeah, so you need to implement a lot of stuff anyway on all the different platforms. And this is a huge issue with PCLs today. This is somehow like a representation of how they work. So you have those intersection profiles. Does anyone actually know like how they generate those profile numbers? For example, if you target like, I don't know, .NET Framework 4.6 and you target Universal Windows Platform, all of a sudden there's like profile number 7, and you're like, what does that mean? Does it include more APIs or less APIs than profile number 452 or something? Like that whole, I mean, portable classes by themselves were a really noble idea, trying to get code reusability amongst like as much as possible, but the implementation was kind of shit. So we are moving on to .NET Standard 2.0, and this actually gets me really exciting because I have one project in the pipeline that is using ASP.NET as the backend and Xamarin as the front end, and I want to reuse as much code as possible. At the moment it's a bit tricky, but yeah, it's getting better. And on the other hand, the project I'm currently paid to work for, we want to do eventually mobile companion apps, and we want to reuse the client logic as much as possible, but at the moment it's a shared project and everything falls apart once you try to like convert the shared project to a portable class and then include it into like mobile apps. Nothing works because we have no idea what we actually need to target, and the APIs are just like, it's a mess. So what is actually .NET Standard 2.0, or well, .NET Standard in general? It's first and foremost a specification. It's just a list of interfaces that if you want to say, okay, my .NET platform implements .NET Standard 1.2, you have to implement all those interfaces and provide the logics for it for your platform, and then you can say, yeah, we are compatible and we are like part of .NET Standard 1.2 or something. And so yeah, as I said, it represents a set of APIs. But with .NET Standard 2.0, it's also becoming a type of class library, and it's actually something you can compile against. So when you will be targeting 2.0, it will look something like this in Visual Studio. You will actually be able to pick class library and pick .NET Standard. This part I can actually show up until this Visual Studio still works, so that's good. So yeah, how it will look like. If you remember the previous slide from about the .NET ecosystem, it will look something like this. So the common infrastructure stays the same, compilers, languages, everything is the same. Base library, you get .NET Standard, one library to rule them all. And on top of that, then you pick your platform and you build whatever you want. So if you want to do VPF, you can reference standard libraries. If you do .NET Core, if you do Xamarin, whatever you do, if your platform implements that standard, you can target it and use the libraries. So all the advantages listed here. And yeah, the best thing is the reusability is huge. .NET Standard will have a huge surface, will show what's new. So when it comes to reusability, I think the only thing that you'll be missing platform specific are like configuration, app configs and stuff like that. So how does targeting look? Like how do you decide what you should target? It looks like something like this. So unlike portable class libraries, where you don't know which profile has what set of APIs. With .NET Standard, you have, imagine it as concentric circles, so .NET Standard 1.0 is the smallest subset. It has something like 13,000 APIs, I think. I'm not sure about the number, something like that. And the bigger the number gets, the more APIs you have. My advice, if you are doing your library as a standard library, take the smallest number that you can get away with, because then you can use it on as many platforms as possible. To show you an example how it looks, we've seen all, so this is roughly, this is how it looks like. So for example, if you want to target for some reason Windows Phone Silverlight as well, your library will have to be .NET Standard 1.0. But if you need some specific APIs that are implemented in .NET Standard 1.6, you will be able to target .NET Core. You will be able to target all these, but unfortunately not Windows Store 8, Windows Phone, and Windows Phone Silverlight. So when you're creating your library, my advice is take this table. These are actually links. This is on the official .NET Standard GitHub repo. Click on whatever you want. So you can actually see what's new, what was introduced into this. With 1.4 they only added some cryptographic libraries. But if you want to see the whole overview, I hope it will not crash now. I'm sorry. You can use, APIs. So you get a whole list. Okay, that will now. So you can see all the APIs that are available in this standard. So if you know you will need, for example, serialization, you will need data sets, just go and search whatever you need. There is another really handy tool to make sure. It's called APIs of .NET. So let's try it. Let's say I need data sets. Okay. So once you start searching data set. So let's say I want to use a data set class in my project, and now it tells me like, okay, if you really need this, you can use it on .NET Core 1.2, and your library will have to target .NET Standard 2.0. If I picked some other API that I want to use, I will search it again and see, and once you go through all the stuff that you want to use, you will figure out what you can target. So let's continue with this. So that much about targeting. So what's actually new? They added a lot of APIs, and that's the most exciting thing about the whole .NET Standard 2.0, because at one point, when they introduced .NET Core, they went on a manic spree to like reduce, and remove as much as possible to make it as small as possible. They introduced some new stuff, they did some stuff different, and in the end people complained because the most widespread at the moment is 4.61, and people are used to working with that set of APIs. So as I told, a lot of things are different, some things are missing, serialization was missing, binary serialization especially. A lot of stuff with reflection is different. So they got that aligned. So with .NET Core 1.2 and the next release of Xamarin and .NET Standard 2.0, they increased the amount of APIs that are available by over 2 times. So pretty much everything that you got used to while working with the .NET framework, if your platform is targeting .NET Standard 2.0, it will work, and it will be the same on all platforms. So what's exactly new? So this is some of the stuff that I added. What excites me seriously, like reflection is one of them. Input-output files, a lot of stuff with file systems is different on, for example, Xamarin or .NET Core. So that will be now the same everywhere. XML schemas, data contracts. I don't know about you, but personally, at the moment in my company, we cannot wait to get our hands on .NET Standard 2.0, to migrate to that, and to start using also a lot of old libraries, and I will show you how to do that as well. So how it all actually works. So yeah, .NET Standard at the moment, as it is, it's represented by a NuGet package, and when you actually create in Visual Studio 2017 .NET Standard library, you will have 2 references. One is netstandard.library, and it will ultimately change into the reference assembly .NET Standard DLL. At build time, so what happens? The .NET Standard DLL will be just an empty shell of all the stuff that your targeting platform has to implement. So it just types on build. During the build process, it just types forward all the stuff that you were using from .NET Standard to the platform that you are actually like running it on, building it for, sorry. And at runtime, each platform provides implementations for the empty interfaces in the .NET Standard DLL. And that's basically it. Should be simple enough. So a diagram of how it works and what you can do is here. So no matter what platform you are targeting, and you do your standard library 2 and above, within that library you can of course reference other .NET Standard libraries. You can also reference portable class libraries. They will get mapped, so the portable class library profiles, they will get mapped to a certain standard that covers them. And the thing I'm really looking forward to, you will be able to reference .NET Framework libraries. So libraries that were written 10, 15 years ago, or like whenever, that target just the .NET Framework, you'll be able to reference them because they are providing a compatibility shim that will type forward everything to your platform, and it will work. The only thing you will not be able to reference, for example, if you have some VPF or WinForms specific libraries, because VPF and WinForms is not part of .NET Standard, so we will not be able to squeeze graphics interface onto another platform with this. But yeah, it's not meant to do that. So, how it actually works, if you are creating a .NET Standard library, so your library will be referencing .NET Standard DLL. And let's say that within your library you are targeting some existing frameworks or class libraries, and they are targeting microlib DLL because they were written for the .NET framework. So what actually happens, microlib DLL will be replaced with an empty shell that just type forwards. For example, if your standard library passes on an object, we know how it works with .NET and the building. Net standard object is different from my MS Core lib object. So, for example, if this library passes an object and this library passes an object. They are not the same object according to the compiler, so it shouldn't work. But since microlib, MS core lib, sorry, is not really the real one, it just types forward to net standard, and you will get the correct type of the object. And this happens not only with MS core lib, this happens with all the framework assemblies that are covered by .NET Standard 2. So it happens with, I don't know, system.data.whatever. So whatever is covered by Standard 2.0, type forward and it works. And on the other hand, if you have a .NET application that targets a specific platform, and it also includes your .NET Standard library, what actually happens is the other way around. Since this is just an interface and it's not a concrete implementation, when the standard library, sorry, I'm losing my voice. So when the standard library asks for some object in .NET Standard, since it's not a real implementation, it just type forwards to the framework and gets the correct thing. So now a quick demo on actually showing how you can figure out if your project is compatible and how much, what do you actually need to change to achieve compatibility with a certain framework. So the first thing I want to show is called, where is it? Okay, it's from Microsoft and it's called .NET API port on GitHub. That's the repository name. And if you go to releases, you can actually download the compiled version, and I did that. It's in my documents folder. And this one is, I don't know how many of you have large-scale projects and how many of you will be doing stuff automatically. So this will be a good tool for automatization. Sorry. So let's live demos. So it's users, Goran, documents. So yeah, first thing you need to do, copy port exit. That's the tool we'll be using. So let's say analyze. And then we specify the file we want to analyze. So for example, I'll be doing the Goran sources, repo, y coins. Let's say 5.8 cents. I'll do the client library that we have just to show you. So this is how our solution looks like, and I want to reuse this, and I really want to reuse this, but at the moment it's not possible to convert it to anything that will be useful for me. So bin debug y coins. So you are actually passing the DLL, and it will analyze the DLL itself. So if I typed everything correctly, live demo that works, love it. So it's done analyzing, and the neat thing is it spits out a really nice Excel file. So we can see here that our library is 95.1% compatible with .NET Standard 2.0, and if we go to details, we can see what's missing. So as I said, once .NET Standard 2.0 comes out, the only thing that we will have to move from the client library to platform-specific things are the configurations. As you can see, system configuration, blah blah. That's not supported in the .NET Standard library. But interesting thing, if we do the same command and we say T for target, and we say .NET Standard version equals 2.0, no, 1.6 for example, and it does the processing, generates a new file. So if I'm converting my project to .NET Standard Library 1.6, we can see compatibility is 90%, and we are missing a ton of stuff. So we are actually really excited about .NET Standard 2.0 for our project. That's just one example. And one example of the tooling you can use. If you are not doing large-scale automatization and you don't need command line tools, another good tool is a Visual Studio extension. So I actually installed it. Yeah, it's called .NET Portability Analyzer. It uses the same tool in the background, but the UI is much nicer. So I have it installed right now, so I don't need to install it again. But what you can do with it, if you right click, you will have a new menu here. Analyze assembly portability. So close this. And if you go to error list, it actually lists you all the stuff that are not working with the .NET Standard that you want to target, that you specified. For example, I configured it to target 2.0. So if you go to the error list and you can see some setting configuration is wrong, you double click on it, it takes you there, and you can remove it, modify it, use something else. So that's a really good tool if you don't do large scale. If you just have one project and you want to make it work with a certain standard. And one more tool I would love to show is called, okay, it's called it's called ICANN has .NET. I mean, the name is kind of weird, but the project itself is really cool. If I upload, this is again my Ycoins client library, and if I upload package config, it gives me a visual representation of what I can use, what I cannot use. So all the blue stuff has known replacements, all the green stuff will be supported in .NET Standard 2.0, and all the orange stuff is unsupported and we have to get rid of it. And the good thing is it actually shows the replacements here. So if we are using ASP.NET Signal Error, it tells us packages have been replaced, updated, and it will work. So another great tool if you are planning to move your libraries to .NET Standard 2.0 and you want to analyze compatibility. So one more thing I really wanted to show is Visual Studio 2015. If you are happy with .NET Standard 1.6 or something, how creating projects actually looks like. So you do class library portable. Let's call it demo of awesomeness. And now, how portable class libraries work. You somehow pick whatever you want to target, I don't know, and it shows you what else it will target, because there is another, all in all, messy, but you have to create it like this. And once you go into Solution Explorer and you click Properties, here below it tells you that you can actually change all this and target a specific .NET Platform standard. It will convert the project, and as you can see, you can pick any version you want. So my advice is, if you're, go as low as you can, so you can use it on as many platforms as possible. Only go higher if you really need some new APIs. If Visual Studio 2017 was actually working, I would have 2.0 here as well. But since I tried working out the demo, this is what kind of happened. So if I go here for a new project, let's say .NET Standard Library. So you can, in Visual Studio 2017, you can target .NET Standard from the get-go. Demo library. I'm not even sure what number I can use, because I tried it a lot of times. So if you target this, something really interesting happens with Visual Studio 2017. It's been acting like this since I updated it, so this happens. There is no framework to target. It's release candidate, and from what I've seen, it, like, most of the stuff works really good. Like it has, it loads project differently. So if you have huge projects, starting up Visual Studio works really faster. It has some refactoring tools that are really nice. It has a lot of nice stuff, but in the end, if it doesn't work, it's just useless. So I tried to manually set up a project that I edited the CS project file by hand, and everything is nicely set up, everything is referenced good. But if we try to actually open the project, and if I actually try to demo some of the good stuff, like target referencing all .NET libraries that were written back in 2009, and actually showing you that they work with .NET Core, something like this happens. So if I go, this is the project I actually set up. So I called it Awesome Library Attempt number 3. And now the magic happens. So if you try to open it, yeah, there's no chance. And I have no idea why. It used, like, never update on demo day. That's my advice. So with that shown and all the compatibility analyzing tools, let's go back here and no slideshow. So the only thing missing from this, are your shared projects compatible? Probably are. And final thoughts and timelines. So final thoughts, that would be about .NET Core and the .NET Standard 2.0. They are two separate projects. So they can be updated separately. .NET Core 1.2 will not have to, they will be able to add more APIs and more stuff without worrying if they adhere to .NET Standard 2.0, and if it goes over to the full .NET framework or Xamarin or somewhere else. But if they decided that a lot of people are using it and the mechanisms are kind of good, they will be pushing it down to another new .NET standard, for example 2.1. So eventually it will trickle over to the other platforms. and they will implement it. Timelines of when this all will be out and when we can meet again and have actually working demos. That's somewhere around the release of Visual Studio 2017. So somewhere, I would say Q2 next year. So .NET Standard 2.0, Visual .NET Core 1.2, and Xamarin Next, or whatever it will be called. It should be all out by the time. And with those thoughts, I would like to thank you all. Yeah, if anyone has questions, let's try to answer some. No one. That's good. Yeah, thanks again.